This is a team talk from a number of people working in Scotland, working on restoring golden eagle populations in the south of Scotland, but I'm also going to touch on some other research being done in golden eagles. And at the outset, I've shown a large number of partner organisations who are involved in this. I'm going to give you some background detail on golden eagles in Scotland because the ecology and habits of golden eagles in Scotland are very different from some other parts of Europe. I'm going to summarise some results of some recent research, and then I'm going to describe the restoration work we're doing in the south of Scotland. But I wanted to start with three things. First of all, to congratulate everyone who's been involved in the production of this fantastic book on the golden eagle, which of course Miguel Ferrer has written the foreword to. Secondly, just to say how wonderful it is to be here with Miguel and Virginia, and to see Miguel doing so well. And this picture actually reminds me of Miguel and Ferrer. The golden eagle on the left, I think of as Virginia. And the golden eagle on the right with its head bowed is Miguel, doing what Virginia tells him to do, but not necessarily with, with great enthusiasm. So it's absolutely wonderful to be here and to see Miguel looking so well and recovering so well. So golden eagles in Scotland, through a whole variety of sources, we've built up a very clear picture of the distribution of golden eagles, including using place names, many place names where golden eagles have bred in the past, through to written accounts by early naturalists in the 1920s, through to a series of national surveys. And the pictures on the right show the sorts of habitats that the golden eagles nest in Scotland. And topography, these ridges that you can see there, are exceptionally important in demarking golden eagle territories. And this is very clear here in some quite excellent work being done by Phil Whitfield and Alan Fielding, where on the basis of the topography, that's the landscape and the ridges that you find in Scotland, they can define very clearly and very accurately where you're going to have the highest densities of golden eagles. So here, where you have very flat lowland areas, they show up as yellow, whereas where you've got these very rugged mountains with lots of ridges, they show up as dark blue. And the circles there indicate the densities of golden eagles we have in Scotland. And in the west of Scotland, we have the highest recorded densities of golden eagles anywhere in the world, with some of these large circles indicating 5 to 6 golden eagle territories. But in the south of Scotland, which I'll touch on towards the end of the presentation, we've just had this tiny population of 3 to 4 pairs of birds. Now, I mentioned Phil Whitfield and Alan Fielding, and some of you may want to take a slide, a picture of this slide, but they've produced a whole range of papers since 2020, and I've just summarized some of the important findings here, namely that topography is a very accurate predictor of golden eagle space use, that golden eagles in Scotland tend to avoid wind farm footprints, that we have very few movements by golden eagles over large water bodies or indeed over lowland habitats, and I'll show you a figure depicting this. The female ranges tend to be much smaller than the male ranges. Seasonal territory settlement tends to be unrelated to a territory occupation, which is something of a surprise, but rather related to innate behaviors of dispersing birds. And Ian mentioned in the California condor how important these ancestral areas are. And it is the same with golden eagles. Golden eagles, when they're moving, young birds, when they're moving through Scotland, they very often settle to roost in areas that have been used for hundreds of years. And over 1 or 2 days, you may get a brother and a sister, or cousins just spending time together on a roost site for 1 or 2 days, and then they move on. But these areas are very obvious in mountains because they tend to have a lot of green vegetation because of the pellets and the droppings deposited by the birds. The final paper at the bottom has just been published in Ecology and Evolution, literally last month, and that's based on DNA analysis of molted feathers collected from nest sites and repeated over a number of years. And here they've been able to estimate male apparent survival of about 78%, which is lower than that of females, which is high at 88%, arguably because of the greater parental burden in males than females. This is, I think, a fascinating study, very well worth studying, and it also shows that occupation of territories tend to be for life. So once a male or a female settle in a particular area, they're going to remain there for the rest of their lives. So 3 graphs here again showing the distribution and density of golden eagles according to topography. On the basis of satellite tracking of golden eagles, we have 3 distinct populations: a population in the Western Isles, population in the Scottish Highlands, and then this tiny population in the south of Scotland. And it is very rare for there to be movement between the Scottish mainland and the Western Isles. And the figure down below, you can see just how few movements we have over large water bodies, most of the movements taking place over upland areas. So the conservation areas for golden eagles, there are really 4 factors influencing them: habitat change and loss, persecution linked to driven game bird shooting, which Ian touched on for red kites, food supplies limited in some areas, and climate change, in particular wet springs, especially in the west of Scotland, where conditions are getting much wetter, and therefore it is much harder for the adults to hunt to find food for the chicks. We produced a conservation framework in 2008 that put these different drivers into perspective. And it was very clear that grouse moors, these areas that are managed for driven grouse shooting, were strongly associated with numbers of corpses of poisoned and shot golden eagles being found. And this has been a problem for many years. Ian mentioned it for red kites. And so in 2016, working closely with Phil Whitfield and Alan Fielding, we analysed results from 500,000 fixes, satellite tagged golden eagles, and we found that 1 in 3, 33% of these satellite tagged birds had died suspiciously, strongly associated with grouse moors. There was also, again, very clear evidence that the golden eagles were avoiding wind farm footprints. As a result of that research finding, and on the very day we published the report and we had a big story in the BBC, we got government ministers to announce the formation of a group to look in detail at the causes of persecution, causes of losses of golden eagles, and to find some solutions. We set up a working group to delve into this, and Ian here was a member of that important working group. After that group deliberated and produced a report, the upshot was the ministers decided to introduce what's called a wildlife management bill, looking to introduce a licensing system for grouse shooting so that we could be assured that where game bird management was taking place, you would only get a license to do so if you could show that you were looking after the birds of prey and the habitats there. When that bill was published, there were more than 5,000 public responses to it, which was unprecedented for a piece of legislation. But in 2024, 7 years after we produced our evidence-based report, new legislation was introduced and grouse moor licenses were issued. It just shows how long it takes to move from the evidence base towards effective legislation. So now, very briefly, I'd just like to touch on the reinforcement of golden eagle population in the south of Scotland. And I should say at the outset, that we've learnt in doing this work, we've learnt a huge amount from the work that's been done in Spain on Spanish imperial eagles. And many of the techniques that Virginia described so clearly earlier on, we've applied in Scotland. So we've had, in 2008, we had 3 to 4 pairs of nesting golden eagles. It's a tiny population. These are more recent data from satellite tagged birds, as I'll describe shortly. So this tiny population, and in 2008, we hit a real crisis when a bird was poisoned and it got an extraordinary amount of publicity. And we realized this really was such a problem, we'd got to try and tackle, take some measures forward to try and stamp out persecution and restore the population, because the population was formerly much larger in the south of Scotland, as you can see from the extent of suitable habitat. So we carried out a detailed survey in 2008. In 2014, we produced a detailed report on habitat suitability and other features in the way that Virginia described for Spain. We formed a partnership the year after to try and take work forward. In 2016, we sought for funding, and in 2017, 9 years later, we began a major program of reinforcement of the golden eagle population. Many partners were involved, but the critical piece of research we did here was to try and estimate how many golden eagle territories we might have in the south of Scotland on the basis of food supply, habitat, topography, photosynthetic activity of the vegetation, land use, recreation, and climate. Climate being very important because it has been getting so wet. We use place names and a whole range of other factors. And we reckoned that whilst we had 2 to 4 ranges occupied, we could have up to 16 pairs breeding in the south of Scotland. So that was our objective, to try and increase numbers to that sort of level. And you'll see where we reckoned the former ranges would have been by these dark blue areas. So we began a program of reinforcing the golden eagle populations. We established protocols, many from Miguel and colleagues. We went out to the Scottish Highlands to collect chicks with vets, very carefully checking the chicks and only collecting 1 chick from nests which was healthy. So typically we'd go to nests with 2 chicks. We would select the larger, stronger, healthier chick and leave, and obviously take care of it, move it down south to our release area, and over a 5-year period, we collected 28 juveniles. We took them to holding pens in one area in South Scotland, again, very much as Virginia described. We collected the chicks at 4 to 6 weeks. We held them for a further 4 to 6 weeks until they were ready to fledge. And then this wonderfully exciting time when the birds were ready to move. And of course, they had no contact with humans during this period. And then, again, as Virginia and Miguel described, we put out food and platforms where the birds could feed and gradually learn to hunt and associate with one another. These are marvelous pictures taken by John Wright, who works on the project and is a fantastic artist as well as a photographer. We also wanted to see if we could accelerate the reintroduction of these birds by taking sub-adults. So in the north of Scotland, we set out some deer carcasses, Dave Anderson and Robin Reed, using bow nets, and trapped golden eagles, sub-adult golden eagles between 4 months and 3 years old. And then we took them down to the release area in the south of Scotland, and in total we've moved 15 sub-adult birds over a 3-year period. This is really a piece of research. We're interested to see what happens to these birds. Ian was describing very elegantly the tendency for birds to disperse, but to settle close to where they are released. And of the 15 sub-adults released, 7 have stayed in the south and 8 have returned north. They've not returned to where they were taken from, but they've returned to the north of Scotland. And here I'm showing the satellite tracking of 2 birds. And next week, we're beginning a program of catching more birds, sub-adult birds, in the north of Scotland to take them down to the south. So after 6 years, we'd released 28 juveniles and 10 sub-adults, and we'd got 7 new territories established with 5 nests built. And again, in the way that Virginia showed over a much longer time period, we've been able to build up this catalogue of juveniles being released, sub-adults being released, and of course birds produced from the few existing nests. And we now have a subtotal of 45 birds, or had a subtotal of 45 birds. And really excitingly, when we look at the movements of the satellite tracked birds, these black clusters indicate territories that have been established by the golden eagles, and they mirror remarkably accurately these dark blue areas that we estimated or predicted would be occupied by golden eagles back in 2014. So topography, food supply, lack of recreation, etc., are very good predictors of where golden eagles will settle. One of the problems we've got is a lack of suitable nesting areas for golden eagles. So here in the spruce forest, the nests are very flimsy, and we've had eggs being produced and then falling through rather flimsy nests. So we're currently putting out some artificial nest sites for the birds. And right now, the situation right now this month is that we have 11 territories with breeding birds, and 8 of these have reintroduced birds. And we've now had 3 successful breeding attempts, and last year we had 1 fledgling produced from 2 reintroduced birds. Our original report suggested we might have 11 to 16 territories, and we're not far off that. We have survival rate in juveniles of 75%, and if we include the sub-adults, 85%. Very briefly, the key to success for this project has been stakeholder engagement. It's been working with the many communities to stamp out poisoning, to work with the game managers, with the farmers, with the local people. And in particular, we employed a game manager to undertake a lot of the liaison with the shooting estates. We've been very open about where satellite tagged birds are moving. So whenever golden eagle, which is tracked, moves into an area that it's not been before, we tell the landowner, we tell the land managers that the birds are there. So there's no secrecy about detailing what these birds are doing. The project has worked with what we call 55 eagle schools and colleges in the south of Scotland, and we keep a tally of the number of people we directly work with in this project, and we're currently standing at more than 35,000 people being involved in the project. So working with stakeholders is vital. And last year, much of our funding has come from the National Lottery, and I know you have a very valuable National Lottery in Spain, but we were very fortunate that the National Lottery has been running for 30 years, and this project was deemed to be one of the most successful projects that they have funded. So rather like Ian, very finally, some lessons learned, just a number that I'd like to share with you. Be prepared to invest in many years of hard, unattractive work. The preparation is vital, being clear about your objectives, having a clear strategy, a timeline that you can stick to, but also making progress in an adaptive way. Some things will work, some things won't. Just adapt. Work with communities, the whole range of interests. Be evidence-based and act on it. If the evidence is pointing to things that you didn't expect, don't think you are right. Stick with the evidence. Take risks. And I picked this up from Virginia and Miguel early on, and be very open. If things go badly, things go wrong, don't conceal them. Tell people, be honest. Operate at as large a scale as possible. And the one thing I'd add here is have a fantastic team of people working with you. We have been exceptionally lucky in having 2 individuals in particular who have made this project a fantastic success. And always, always be optimistic. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.